Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. As many of you know, I love to interview fellow former ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I have one such individual with me today. It's my great pleasure to welcome onto the channel, Jennifer Hanson. Welcome.
Thank you, Lloyd. It's nice to meet you finally.
It's lovely to have you on the channel, Jennifer. Obviously, my producer reached out to you and you've been very kind to share some details about your story. And when I was reading through about your story, wow, so much has happened to you. Much of it before you even encountered the Jehovah's Witnesses. But that sort of informs, in a way, how the story developed and how the Jehovah's Witnesses were able to make inroads. So can you tell us how it all began for you?
Sure. I think the reason that I started studying was because I just had a really bad tragedy and I was really vulnerable and I felt like I needed some structure. I needed something in my life to change. And so I was contacted at the door. I had never heard of Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't know anything about them. And the first time I was contacted, I was living in a very rough neighborhood. And the couple that came brought their two small children. And I was appalled. I was like, what are you doing in this neighborhood? With these two babies.
So you were contacted at a vulnerable time. You just had like a very, very traumatizing experience. Am I right in understanding that you were also traumatized as a child?
Yes, I was definitely a abused child, sexually especially. My first father was put away when I was 6 years old. And then my stepfather was extremely abusive, and I was extremely sad. And I did well in school and things like that. But as far as my home life went, I was not doing well. And I started self-harming very young. And that just continued throughout my life.
And at the point when the witnesses contacted you, am I right in saying that you'd had another sort of abusive encounter?
Yes, I was abducted by a man. I thought it was a first date. And he kept me in a room for 3 days and abused me in every way possible. Left me for dead. I threw a kerosene lantern out of the window to escape, ran across the desert, half naked, and a man found me, or I found a man that was at a mechanic shop, and he wrapped his shirt around my waist and drove me home. I didn't report it to the police. I was terrified that it was my fault because I had gone with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And off the back of this experience, am I right in saying it wasn't long after this that you had a knock at the door?
Correct. That happened in July, and in October is when I first started studying. So I believe it was still summertime when I was contacted, maybe a month afterwards. And I just, I took the Watchtower and the Awake, and then I thought they were part of UNICEF. I had no idea who they were. And I put them in the garbage immediately. I gave them the money, and I just didn't know what they were about. But I was later in a musician situation doing demos, and the man was a brother, and his wife started studying with me. And at first, when I went to the Kingdom Hall, I was like, wow, these people are way old-fashioned. And I felt like they were desperate because they remembered me from the door. And I was like, wow, you don't have any friends? You know, what's going on? But I did like the idea that they were family oriented, and I was raising my son alone. And at the time he was 3. And by the time he was 4.5, I was baptized in 1988.
Okay. So it sounds like you were love bombed. It sounds
definitely. And I needed that. I needed that at that time.
Indeed. And obviously you're then encouraged, aren't you, to kind of go out and almost use the same tactics on people, which is to essentially prey on those who have gone through traumatic or upsetting or distressing experiences and say, this may have befallen you, but, good news, I've got the solution, and it's in the form of this book or this magazine.
Yes, when I was first studying, I had 2 workmates. I was working at a veterinary hospital, and I had 2 workmates I was studying the Bible with. Well, actually, the Live Forever book, I was in the 5th chapter and they were in the 1st chapter. That's how zealous I was. And I really believed that I was going to save people, that this
you'd started a study when you were still only on the 5th chapter of the Live Forever book yourself.
Yes.
Wow.
And actually, I had 2. And they were progressive studies for quite a while. And then, of course, they fell out after they realized what was going on. But I was extremely, I went forward very, very quickly. And I think the most not important thing, but the thing that really touched me was the gal that was studying with me. She was kind of like a mom. And I hadn't had that experience. My mom was very cold and she didn't know how to show emotion. So she had adopted me. I wasn't, I don't know if that has anything to do with it really, but I wasn't her real child. And I think that because of the situations with her husbands, she didn't care for me too much. And I loved her very much, but it didn't work out really. We were estranged when I was very, like 17. But this sister was so much like a mom. I think that's what attracted me. And that's why I went forward so quickly.
You found like a surrogate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she was very strong in the truth. Very strong.
Okay. But how, obviously you had this, you had this euphoric kind of conversion experience, and took it clearly very seriously if you were studying with people yourself while you were still studying.
Yeah.
Did this kind of honeymoon period continue indefinitely, or did things start to go?
Well, I think the indoctrination that I had was so powerful, and coming from such a situation that was sad, and I felt, even though I knew I was a smart person, I felt like the Bible was so foreign to me. The Bible was like, wow, the true God, Jehovah, I'm going to be part of that. I'm going to be able to witness to other people about the Most High God. And so I think that I was kind of egotistical, thinking, I had something special to offer. And I kind of did in a way, because I identified with people easily, especially with traumatic situations. And I think that was attractive to other people too.
But what did this help alleviate? Because you'd obviously gone through lots of traumatic or traumatizing experiences leading up to this, including the abduction that you mentioned and your abuse as a child.
Yeah.
Did your newfound faith help resolve those issues to the point where your mental health evened out?
No. I suffered quite a bit with emotional problems. I had PTSD really bad from my childhood, and that continued. After a while, I think what was happening, because I went to therapy, and I think what happened was the brothers and sisters got kind of like soft shunning me, and I didn't know. I just kept feeling worse and worse about myself. And I think after changing congregations, I moved up to Seattle I'm originally from Seattle, so I came back because I let my son live with his father. He wanted to go live with his father. So I decided to move back. And when I got up here, of course, I changed congregations, and the feeling I got was that I was coming from this warped person. Like I just felt like they didn't want me or something like that. It was a cold congregation, I guess you could say.
Mm.
And I was a warm person. And I tried so hard. I just was like, oh, well, if I don't have anything to offer in the ministry, really, I mean, I did talks and things like that, but if I have trouble getting out in the ministry, I'll go to every single meeting and I'll love on the older people and help them as much as possible. And I really wanted to do the right thing. And when I was reading this stuff about the blood issue, because I went through the blood issue, I can't believe how I was just so duped into believing that everything had to do with Jehovah saving me.
Mm. Well, you allude to the blood issue. Mm-hmm. You ended up facing it, didn't you? And
I did.
I think you're alluding to, for the purposes of this show, you mentioned just off air that you were going through your notes and you couldn't believe how everything happened. Obviously, viewers to the channel will know, if they don't know anything else about Jehovah's Witnesses, that Jehovah's Witnesses don't accept blood. They view it as sacred. They view transfusing it as tantamount to fornication. And they are willing to die or even let their children die, refusing it. So you faced this situation, and I assume you were ready to die.
Well, I started out, I was having some emotional problems, and I had a condition called conversion disorder. And so what happened was I lost the use of my legs. They went numb. And it had to do with emotional trauma causing your body to, it just moves on to your physical being. And so it was short term, but I was in a nursing home for a while, for about 2 months, I think. And while I was in there, I passed out. I was in the wheelchair, and I just slumped over. And I felt weak all day. And I kind of sat up again, and then I went to the restroom, and I was looking in the mirror, and I was like, I am just so light. What is wrong with me? And I felt weak. So this one brother used to come to visit me occasionally. He was an elder. And he came in his jeans and t-shirt one day, and I was so impressed with that. I was like, I'm so glad you're human. And he waited with me for an ambulance, because even in bed, I was so weak I couldn't even function. And so the ambulance came, they took me to the hospital. The worst thing was, the minute we got there, the nurse came up and she said, "My God, you are so white, you must be bleeding somewhere." And they said, "The first thing we need to do is give you blood." And the elder that was with me stood up out of his chair and said, "This woman is one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and she does not accept blood transfusions." And in my heart, I thought, oh, he's standing up for me. He's like a dad. He's
making my medical decisions for me.
Yeah,
how sweet of him.
Yeah, how sweet of him, because I was, so sick. But they immediately, they put a shunt in my leg to measure my blood pressure. They put a PICC line in my arm to measure the blood. And my hematocrit was down to 7, which is deadly. And in that hospital, I had nurses running around saying, "This person is going to die if she doesn't take blood." And they were angry. They were angry at me. They were angry at the elder. And I remember being in the room, a different room, and the elder came in with me, and he went to the phone, and it was around 5:00. And he went to the phone. It was a, landline. And he said, "Honey, what time is dinner?" He was talking to his wife. And I thought, that's strange. What time is dinner? It's kind of cold. And that was just one thought that I had. But I ended up, my son flew up from California to come and see me. he had been in the truth for 9 years, but when his father wasn't in the truth. So, you know, he wasn't really indoctrinated. In fact, he was worldly again. And by this time he had graduated from high school. He was 22, and he begged me, "Mom, please take blood. Please, you're going to die. I need you. I need you." And he cried. He was only 23 years old, 22 years old. He needed me. And I just kept saying, you know, if I die to Jehovah. And if, you know, when I die, I'll be in paradise. And even my friends were like, you know, Jennifer, you need to rely on Jehovah and be strong. And I had gone to, I was writing it down, the transfusion-free medical services right before I went into the hospital. Or no, this was a different time. So my DPA was completely filled out to have no blood and no fractions. Because I kept thinking, well, if Jehovah doesn't want me to take blood, why would I take fractions? I'm like, no.
So this would have been after the rule changed in 2000. Are you able to, just for my own kind of benefit, tell me which year this would have been roughly?
This was 2006. Yeah. I was 43.
Okay. And, so, 6 years after the rule change involving the fractions. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the beginning, they pumped out of my stomach because I was bleeding internally. It was an ulcer, and it was in my duodenum, which is part of your upper intestine. And what they did is they pumped the blood out with a scope. And one of the nurses put the blood in a beaker next to my bed. And it was like she was taunting me. These people were really angry about me not taking blood. Well, the liaison committee showed up, and I remember thinking, wow, they're standing up for me. You know, they really care. And I didn't think they were going to enforce me not taking blood.
Just to be clear, did you invite the HLC to come?
No.
So they came without invitation. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And the first elder that showed up, I was a friend of mine's friend he had known since childhood. And so I was supposed to trust him, correct? And he was like standing there like a statue with this authority. And it felt like, I felt uncomfortable. I felt kind of like, you know, I'm glad you're here because you're going to, you know, stand up for me. But at the same time, I felt kind of like, you know, I don't really know you.
Well, he wasn't standing up for you. He was standing up for your religion.
Correct. And the thing was, is that it was like a threat. It felt like for the nurses and the doctors. It seemed like, you know, oh, I'm a minister and I'm here to make sure that Jen's okay and that, you know, you guys don't force blood on her.
So then the HLC men in suits arrive, and three of them. Why would they need three?
I don't know. It's a big deal.
So, and how did the dynamic change once they arrived?
Okay, well, the doctors transferred me to another hospital because only after 3.5 hours of calling different surgeons, only one surgeon would take my case. So they had to transfer me to a different hospital. And the blood had stopped bleeding at one point, and they thought I was going to be okay. But then it started up again. And I don't think, I mean, they kept saying, you are going to die. You need to take blood. You can't live like this. My hematocrit went to 8. My hemoglobin was 2.6. I mean, this was like record lows. And I just had this feeling, I was very peaceful because I was in hypovolemic shock. You know, of course, I had no blood in me, so I was very calm. But I thought of it as the angels were with me. I wasn't with it.
No.
So I was kind of at the mercy of the witnesses, and I found that one of the pioneers, a regular pioneer woman, was at my bedside every day, all day long, after the elders left. And they did visit me. The elders did visit me.
I hate to be so pedantic, but presumably the regular pioneer was there on the instructions of the HLC,
yes,
rather than your instructions.
Yes, I realize that.
And just to also be clear, the moving to another hospital under the care of another doctor, when you mentioned that this took hours of phone calls, this would have been the HLC making the phone calls, presumably. Yes. And it would have been their call ultimately to move you to a hospital and to find a doctor who would be willing to operate without blood. Would that also be fair?
That is exactly right. That transfusion, I keep forgetting what it's called, transfusion-free medical services, I had signed up for previously, and it was at the hospital that they sent me to. Right. So they were definitely not going to give me blood there. My DPA was in, good standing, and of course the elders were, I believed that I would die to Jehovah, and that everything would be copacetic. But it's just awful when I look back at it that I suffered so badly because I was in ICU for 12 days. I was constantly told, you need to take blood. And I myself would say, no, I can't do this. It's Satan. Satan wants me to take blood, not, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so I was totally indoctrinated about it. And when the end came, the doctor that was going to do the surgery, they said, we can't open you up because if you lose any more blood, you're just going to be dead. So anyway, he asked the elders, the brothers and sisters that were there. It was about 8 people standing around my bed. And they said,
I'm sorry, 8 people around your bedside is effectively a mob at this point.
Yeah, and my son was not in the room.
Right. Was he trying to get in the room?
Oh, he went to the I don't know what they're called, but the top of the hospital, and said, put my mom in a coma, save her life, please. And
are you saying, Jenza, that the HLC was stopping your son from getting to you and from having any say in your treatment?
Yes, my sister came, my brother-in-law came. I had been estranged with them. And so when they asked to come see me and say goodbye, because that's what the doctor said, you need to say goodbye to your family and your friends. When that happened, I think I was devastated that I was going to die, but I also had, they put me on this table and the doctor had told everybody to leave the room. And he had wheeled me into this, I guess, the operating room. And he was going to do a scope and try to burn or cauterize the bleeding. That was the only solution he could come up with. And so I go in this room, and of course, in an operating room, it's bright white light. And I was thinking, oh, the angels have me. And what ended up happening was the doctor said, Jenza, if you don't take blood, you have 1/10 of 1% of surviving this. And I said to the nurse, and she walked up to me, and they were going to knock me out to do the cauterizing. And I said to her, wow, I guess I'm going to die tonight. It kind of hit me at that point. And looking back, I can't believe that I survived, and that I barely ever lost consciousness. I would come in and go out, but the last and final thing that was told to me by the doctor, because I asked him afterwards about the 12th day before I got out of the ICU, I asked him, I said, why do you think I survived? Was it the cauterization? He said, no, you have a very strong heart. And he didn't mean emotional heart. He meant physical heart. And that stayed with me for the rest of my life, because when I realized that they were wrong to try to stop me from taking blood. And they were wrong to tell me that blood was, it's a medical miracle.
So just to be absolutely clear, you did decline blood to the very end.
Absolutely.
And for reasons that we don't really understand, your body's resilience, the doctor's skill, who knows, combination of all, you survived.
Right. I did survive.
But you shouldn't have survived. You shouldn't be talking to us, should you?
No.
And there were, as I mentioned, there was a mob at your bedside trying to make sure that you didn't survive. If push came to shove.
I had a funeral paper handed to me for me to sign. It was like they were saying, first they asked my sister, they're quite wealthy, you need to give us $5,000 so we can bury your sister. And my sister
said that in the hospital.
Yeah, when she couldn't even see me. And then because the witnesses felt that they would have to bury me because my sister declined, I remember them handing me a paper, and it was for a funeral arrangement so that my Social Security would pay for the burial, which they hardly pay any money for that. But it was kind of like they didn't want to take any responsibility for what was going to happen. And I feel like, that was really sad. Yeah.
One thing that tends to happen when a Jehovah's Witness survives in this situation is that they are heralded as kind of a hero, and they are kind of pointed to as an example of the truth of Watchtower's truth in saying, we can get through even the most seemingly life-threatening situation can be survived with the proper medical care and with quote unquote blood alternatives. Is that how things played out?
Yeah.
I
actually wrote a letter to the Watchtower, and it was all about the experience that I'd had. And I was feeling like they had my back, and how wonderful the organization is. I wrote to them about my abuse as a child and how I had come through all this traumatic experience and then lived through the blood issue, and how, Jehovah was wonderful. And the thing was, though, Lloyd, is that directly after that, I had to give up. I had to go to an adult family home to recover. My blood was at 4, which was enough to get me there, get out of the hospital after 12 days. That was harrowing, to be in the hospital for 12 days and be constantly, people wanting to force blood on, really. But anyway, so I went to this adult family home that was run by witnesses, and they were abusive. They were very neglectful. A bowl of oatmeal in the morning and then left alone all day. I had to do my own medications. It was just really hard. So I had to give up my apartment because you have to live in your apartment for 30 days. And if you're not there for 30 days, they take it away because it was a subsidized situation. And so I gave up my apartment. The brothers and sisters moved everything out. And after what happened was the WAC, which is the Washington Association of Code or something like that, came to the house because they knew what was going on, because I had tried to commit suicide while I was in there. I cut myself so bad that I was bleeding all night, and I was afraid to tell the lady because she was so angry. She was so mean. So I finally told her, and she was a person that worked at the hospital. She took me into the back of the hospital and had a friend stitch me up because she would get in trouble if they had allowed me to be around knives or something. I don't know what the reason was, but a nurse found out what had happened and reported it. So when the WAC came, which was a woman who was going to enforce the codes, she wanted to know how I was living, what was going on, and I told her the truth. And they told the people that were running the house, the woman, you need to get her out of here within an hour. It took 6 hours for me to admit what was going on. 6 hours, because I was afraid I was going to lose my cat. Of all things, they allowed me to have my cat there. And I thought, gosh, if I tell on these people, I'm going to lose my cat. And I loved my cat. So it's kind of a weird reason, I think, but it was all I had. So I went to live in a basement with a brother and sister, but the brother was disfellowshipped. And I was there for 2 weeks. And at the time, I was still recovering. I was very weak. And I had a few belongings with me that I had kept, pictures and whatnot. And the brother, or the disfellowshipped brother, told his wife, I don't want her here, because I don't know. He just didn't want me there. So I called the presiding overseer, and I had money. I had a Social Security check that came in every month. And I really fully expected this brother, the presiding overseer, elder, to help me, find a place to live, maybe with a single sister or a mother-in-law apartment or something. I fully felt that after all I had been through, that they would have my back, because I thought they did have my back. Well, they didn't have my back. He said, I'll talk to the elders about it and I will get back to you tomorrow. So evidently he talked to the elders and prayed all night. This is what I hear from his wife later. Oh, he prayed all night about it.
Yeah,
and
his prayer looked suspiciously like he was sleeping, but I have to assume it was prayer.
Yeah. And so I ended up going to a shelter at his direction. He said, if you go to a shelter, possibly 3 to 5 days, they will find you housing. What a joke. What a joke. This man had no idea what he was talking about. In Seattle, if you need housing and you are disabled, which I have the psychiatric disability, and I've been on Social Security for many years, the situation is you get on lists. And once you're on a list, first of all, finding a shelter was ridiculous. You have to call every morning and say, is there a bed? And, these people I was staying with were getting really frustrated. And so I felt kind of thrown away. And I ended up in a shelter finally. And I did everything they said. I even did other people's chores because I didn't want them to get kicked out. I felt for people. And I had my cat with me too, which was really weird, being homeless with your cat. But in between shelters, because you couldn't always stay very long, I slept under a park bench at the library. They had a big park area. I would just throw a sheet over the park bench and lay on the ground and sleep. At the time, I was still recovering from this anemia, and it was very difficult. I didn't want to make friends with the world, right? But I noticed something which was really hard, is that the brothers never called me after that. It was like I had this stigma about me that I was homeless now.
At their recommendation,
Oh,
because they
definitely.
couldn't be bothered
Yeah.
to find somewhere. Yeah, okay.
It was very difficult. So
Mm.
I eventually got housing, but it took 4 years. 4 years on the street. And I'm an older woman. I mean, I was 40 something, and I had nowhere to go.
And at what point did the penny drop that you'd sort of been kind of chewed up and spat out by a abusive cult?
I continued to go to meetings when I was homeless. I was shunned completely. One of the areas that I was living in, I remember I had flip-flops on. I had to wear street clothes to get to the Kingdom Hall because I was on the bus. I wasn't going to wear a skirt on the bus. That was embarrassing. And so I get to the Kingdom Hall this one time. I went back to my old congregation, and I was really seeking love. I was really just seeking, these are people that know me. And I fell asleep because I had been so sick and so weak. I fell asleep in the nursing area in the back of the Kingdom Hall. And when I woke up, I was still in my street clothes. And 2 sisters were standing outside the sliding door saying, "What is she doing? Why is she here like that? Look at her. She's not even dressed properly." And when I heard that, I remember that was where the penny started to drop, which was, these people they don't want me. I was never a full-time pioneer. Well, maybe I was I tried several times, but I never got to a year. And I feel like because I had emotional problems, because I came from the world, that there was some type of, I'm not good enough. But these elders, I went to the meeting in flip-flops at one point, and because I didn't have proper shoes.
Mm.
Flip-flops are, right?
Little we have
sandals
them in Europe,
rubber sandals. And the looks that I got, and what happened was I asked the elders, I said, because I wanted some encouragement. And I asked the elders after the meeting, "Can I speak to you?" And so they took me to Starbucks. And the whole impression I got was, because I was homeless, they said, "What do you want from us?" I mean, literally said, "What do you want from us?" And it was like, maybe they thought I was going to use them for needing housing, or I was going to dupe the brothers and sisters into something. I don't know what their thinking was. But it was this big rejection. And so, I continued going to meetings, not there. And I continued to pray to Jehovah. I did everything that I had been taught to do, but I was alone in the world. I never got a phone call. Even the brothers and sisters that had been my close friends abandoned me. And I never really understood why. Maybe it was just because I was homeless. I'm not sure. But
they'd been falling over each other to get to your bedside when there was an opportunity to send you to the grave due to your medical situation. But they seemed to do a much poorer job with you actually being alive. And living and trying to live and trying to survive. Yeah.
I felt like they thought I was damaged goods.
Mm.
I wasn't worth keeping around. I felt like a victim at the time, but looking back, it was just the way that they had been taught. Everybody's indoctrinated. And I can't say that I really blame my friends and whatnot. I mean, I love Jehovah's Witnesses. I feel like they are precious people, and I had some good times. I was in the truth for 27 years. And
Jennifer, the religion nearly killed you. I hate to be blunt.
But the people, I mean, like my friends, they when times were good,
Well, friends are there not just when times are good, you know?
I know.
They were conditional friends, weren't they?
I think so. Yeah, definitely. And I feel that the world is a lot nicer. I found housing through a mental health, not facility, but mental health group. And it's very small. And they have very few clients. And they gave me housing. And so I have this beautiful apartment. Of course, I'm an artist, so I'm always rearranging and making things beautiful in my home. I have a home now. And I've been here for 10 years. And my life is great. I mean, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm trying to let you know that my life as a witness was so controlled and so pulled down. You know, I felt like I had to do everything right. I had to do things right, or I wasn't going to be in paradise, and I wanted paradise. And now that I've looked at your channel, I mean, the first time I looked at your channel, I was walking around the house going, damn, that's right. That's right. That's right. Oh my God, I can't believe he knows. And it was exciting. It was very exciting. Because when I started to fade, which was in 2015, it was because I had gone to the elders. And what happened was I had drank and gotten drunk, and I was embarrassed about it. I did it at my house, and it wasn't, nobody knew about it really, but I went to the elders and I confessed to them that I had been drinking. And so I think it was a week later, I went to the meeting. And they said, we'd like to talk to you. And I really thought this was for encouragement. And there was 3 elders in the room instead of 2. And I don't think it was around the drinking deal. I think because I had a lot of issues emotionally. I think maybe they thought I just wasn't worth it. I'm not sure. But so I'm in the room with 3 elders and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a judicial committee. They didn't, even tell me about it. They just came in the room. And so first of all, I was afraid of men, after all I've been through. And these elders, 2 of them were very cold elders, very stoic, and I never really liked them. Always tried to get them to like me, but it didn't really pan out. So I'm in the room, and instead of them asking me questions about what was going on in my life or anything like that, this elder says to me, they're standing up and I'm sitting down because there was no other chairs in there. It was just 1 chair. And he said, do we need to disfellowship you? It was like a threat. And I said, why? Why would you disfellowship me? Because I kind of thought it was about the drinking, but I also thought, I have mental problems. Maybe they're judging me. But I thought to myself, my God, I've been faithful all these years and they want to disfellowship me? What did I
give you any reason? Did they give you any reason as to why it had been formed, the judicial committee?
No.
They just said, do we need to disfellowship you?
Yeah, it was a question. Do we need to disfellowship you? And I thought they want to disfellowship me. And they had no reason other than the drinking thing, but I confess.
Well, the drinking thing is odd. I mean, again, if the way it works is if you are going around embarrassing yourself and developing a reputation in the congregation as an alcoholic, and you are unrepentant about it, that they tend to disfellowship people like that. But if you have a bit too much to drink one night in the privacy of your own apartment and feel so bad about it that you speak to your elders and say, I feel really bad about this, that is not what you would call but by virtue of the fact that you have come forward with that information and obviously feel bad about it. The repentance is implied,
Ah,
So it's very strange. It sounds, to be honest, like they just wanted rid of you
yeah, I
and
felt
had
that.
come up with a pretext for doing so,
So what I told them is I felt like I had tried so hard to do right. And I didn't have very many friends in that congregation. They were always kind of stuck up or like they felt better than me. And so when I was in that room, what I said to them, because when I was a youngster, I had a drinking problem. When I was 12 to 17, I was drinking on a constant basis at school.
Was this to do with the way you were being
Yes.
raised and abused?
I had lived in Iran for 4 years
Mm.
as a teenager, and I had been raped very many times. And so I started drinking in 7th grade and continued. And then I went to AA. So before I was in the truth, I was in AA. So I told the elders, I think I need to get some help. I think I need to go to AA. And they agreed. And I think that was their way out to get rid of me. And so they didn't disfellowship me. But I left there with my head hanging and went home, cried my eyes out. And I realized, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. I can't go back. And yeah, it was rough. It was really rough.
So the outcome of this meeting was that they didn't disfellowship you?
No, they did not disfellowship me.
Okay.
But I live in the same town, right? I live in West Seattle.
Yeah.
They're all here. And I would see them either out in service, in the car. They never came by to see me. They didn't get anywhere I was. They didn't give me phone calls. They didn't do anything. And what was interesting is as I was fading, when I would see them, like with the carts and stuff, I would approach them and talk to them. And I would say, yeah, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And what's the magazine about right now? And
it sounds like the only way to get their attention is to be dying from needing blood. And,
definitely.
And then again, they're falling over each other to get to your bedside.
Right, wow. Right. And it's just ridiculous. So I ended up after your channel, and I've watched like Eve 2.0. I like her. I love Jay the comedian. What's poppin'? And now I love Harrison Kozer. He's just amazing. But after watching your channel, and I really got into it because it was my research to listen to you. And so I got up the nerve in December, this 2020.
This December. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I had 2 blood transfusions in 2020 in the hospital because I almost died of a back infection. I had surgery and the implant was infected, and I nearly died.
So you were sufficiently awake last year in the same situation to accept blood. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the nurses came in and she said, your blood levels are too low because my spinal fluid and my blood was really infected. And they said, we need to give you a blood transfusion. And I said, absolutely. I had 2 of them.
Yeah.
It was a little scary at first. I was like, is this going to be okay? But then I thought they're trying to help me. They want to help me, and I want to live. So
yeah.
So
you have something to live for because your life has improved.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Lloyd, I just made the decision that I needed to dissociate myself. They'd never tried to reach out to me. I had started going to AA. I had stopped drinking. I had done the best I could to become a good person still. And so I called the Kingdom Hall and left a message. And I was very firm in my speaking. Of course, nobody was there. It was on a Sunday, I think. But it's because of COVID. Nobody's at the Kingdom Hall. And so I left the message and I said, hi, this is Jennifer Hanson. They used to call me Jennifer. Of course, I changed back to my nickname, Jenzo, when I left. And I said, I have been in the past a member of your congregation. I don't know if you remember me. And then I said, I wish to be dissociated from the congregation and no longer wish to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Please contact me. And I got a phone call a week later from the cold elder. And he said, it was so funny. Not funny, but it was so typical. He said, are you sure that's what you want to do? And I'm thinking, I'm already out, and
it's already been done.
Yeah. I said, absolutely, that's my decision. And he said, well, we're only imperfect men. And I thought, what are you making an excuse? Like you pushed me out and you realize it now? So
imperfect men who very nearly had me killed.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the thing is he said, would you be willing to write a letter of dissociation? And I thought, why? So you can have proof? I said, I know you have another elder in the room for, confirmation. So you don't need a letter from me.
Yeah.
Got my word. Yeah. I'm gone.
Yeah.
And what a feeling of freedom. Free. Just felt like I was just looked it up and now I can move on with my life and screw them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Jenza, it's been an absolute thrill. This is about all I have time for, but I'm filled with admiration that you've managed to make it. You shouldn't be alive, but you are. Faced with the same situation a second time or third time, you certainly knew what to do when blood was an issue. But I'm so glad that you managed to get out of that toxic environment where people were clearly just chewing you up and spitting you out, and only really interested in, frankly, trying to engineer your death rather than trying to make your life enjoyable and pleasurable. If there's anyone watching this who is on the fence when it comes to whether to stay in or quit Jehovah's Witnesses, what would your message be to them?
Listen to your heart. Do what you want to do with your life. Don't listen to people that don't have your best interests. They don't have your best interests. They just want you stuck in a situation where you're busy doing nothing. And freedom is there. Freedom is there. Just got to reach out for it. It's scary, but you can do it.
Absolutely. And it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So viewers, that's all I have time for. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I know I have. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lloyd Evans channel for more such videos. And as always, thank you for watching.